Hello, hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello.
We're going to take a few minutes and just give people a chance to log on. Nice to see everybody. Some familiar faces, some new faces. Go on to.
I don't know why I'm not on video because I walked away. So anyway, cheers. I'm not waiting for you.
What makes you think we've been waiting for you?
Probably not.
Okay. Looks like people are joining, and in a few minutes, we will ask you to put yourselves on mute so we can continue.
Oh yeah, no. I don't know why it didn't come on video.
Judy,
I walked away. So.
Judy, don't get too ahead of yourself that you forget where the mute button is.
No, I know where the mute. You want to see?
Hi, Deanie and Andy.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
How are you doing? Good. I'm going to mute myself here.
Hi, Anne. So nice to see old friends and new. Tim, are we good to go? Do you think we have our? Okay, we're going to wait just a few more minutes. We have we are so excited that 82 people signed up to join us for a happy hour tonight, which is pretty great. Andy and I usually have just a few less than that around our Shabbat tables, so it's nice to have a few more. We are going to wait just a few more minutes to see if anyone people keep joining. All right, everybody have all their fixins and their ingredients.
I'm gonna see this. Can you see my table with my stuff?
Can you show us?
Let me see.
Oh, awesome.
Where
Awesome.
are we looking?
I got vodka and gin because I don't really do gin, but I got it out for effect.
Perfect.
Good.
We're going to talk about substitutions. I have to give Susan Grodnick a shout out. Is Susan on yet? Susan on? All right.
I am
Susan,
on.
You get a shout out for having every single one of the ingredients on my list right there in your house. Very impressive.
I take the credit.
Oh, okay, Scott, you get the credit.
I'm the mixologist. I'm the one that makes the drinks in the house.
But I like to drink.
As we're getting ready to start, I want to give a special welcome to Lisa Colton, who's one of the founders and organizers of the Great Jewish Food Fest. Thank you, Lisa, for making this possible and for bringing us all together tonight.
It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Okay, how are we doing? Are we ready to go?
Yeah. We can get started and I'll
Yeah, we'll get started and you'll keep letting people in. Okay. So I want to welcome everybody. My name is Rabbi Adina Lewidis. Everybody calls me Deanie. I am the founding rabbi of Sha'ar, and I also serve as a scholar in residence at B'nai Jeshurun in Manhattan. I'm very proud to tell you that Sha'ar is an exciting and creative and radically inclusive Jewish voice in the global conversation around social and environmental sustainability and moral and spiritual activism. We get together for innovative Shabbat and holiday programs, for transformative study sessions, and for pretty adventurous travel programs that take us all over the world in all kinds of diverse and collaborative settings in order to open the gate to Jewish life in the 21st century. We are thrilled to have you here today and to spend the next hour together. You know, they say that behind every strong woman is a strong woman, so I want to introduce you to mine. This is my wife, Andy Lewis, who's here with us today and I call myself Rabbi on the Rocks. Honestly, this is the biggest rock in my life, and nothing that I do is as successful and exciting and fun without Andy by my side. So, thanks, Ann.
Very nice introduction. Let's get to it.
All right. So, Rabbi on the Rocks, right? Some of you have heard me say this before. It bears repeating, I think. You may tell me no. Rabbi, right? Everybody's got to have a backup. It's a changed world. The world is changing. Spell rabbi backwards. What do you get? I-bar. That's my own little way of making sure that that I always have something else to keep me busy and having fun. Come on, not bad, eh? Right? Okay. Now, I'm not the first rabbi to be involved in the world of spirits and the world of wine. Many rabbis right throughout history, especially in medieval times, were involved in the liquor business. Think of Rashi in the 11th century France, whose commentary on the Torah and on the Talmud is indispensable to all Jewish study. He was a very well-known winemaker, a well-known vintner, and had many colleagues in the same position. The involvement of European Jews in wine production and the liquor trade goes back almost 1,000 years. Now, I gotta confess, I am formally trained as a rabbi for over 30 years, but I am not formally trained as a mixologist. I'm just someone who likes to tinker, someone who likes to experiment, and someone who loves to bring creativity to concocting cocktails, especially Erev Shabbat on a Friday afternoon when our family likes to gather before we light candles for a little while, to sit together, to reconnect, and to enjoy a nice drink that opens the heart, that relaxes the mind, and that softens the soul in anticipation of Shabbat's beauty and Shabbat's serenity. We love to bring our family together, to toast each other l'chaim, and to really, as I said, reweave our love and our relationships in anticipation of the beauty of Shabbat. To that end, I want to introduce you to one of our kids. Andy and I are blessed to have 6, yep, you heard it, 6 kids. We are the modern Brady Bunch family, except we don't wear bell bottoms and we don't have Mike. Tam, come around. I want to introduce you to Tamar, who's our executive producer this evening.
Hi, everyone.
Andy's daughter, Tamar. We have 5 others. Farah, Andy's other daughter, Farah, who's on the call. She's waving. I have my oldest, Jonathan, who I saw at some point. I think he's on as well. My second son, Aaron. My son, Isaac, and my daughter, Nomi, who I think is also on board tonight. So welcome, everyone. Our family's not all here in our kitchen, but we're together, and that's really nice to share with you.
Get back to work.
Yeah, I have to go
Back to work, Sam.
back behind the camera.
Now, because we're such a big group, we're not going to have everybody unmute because we want to make sure that you can hear us and all the fun things that we want to share with you. But we do want to invite you to use the chat feature. Please feel free to share with us where you're from, what excited you about joining us for cocktails this evening, maybe your favorite cocktail. And if you have a question or a comment at any time, then please do unmute yourself, and we'll be happy to take your question and to hear your voice. Okay, now, when people think about alcohol and Judaism, they tend to think more about wine. And though I wouldn't call myself a wine connoisseur, some of you I know online here tonight can, I do appreciate good wine, good Torah, good friends to share them all with. And while I don't have long legs and I try not to be dry, I have been known to be bubbly sometimes and to be somewhat intense and to have depth. Not always too sweet, I suppose, but I can be powerful, and I do try to bring solid structure to my teaching. Now, wine as an intoxicating beverage is actually really interesting to think about it from the Torah's perspective as a way to sort of unburden our souls, to open ourselves to deeper insights, and to be present to each other. But on the one hand, we're all familiar, I imagine, with the presence of wine in so much of Jewish life. We make Kiddush on Shabbat and on holidays over wine. Many of the life cycle rituals are accompanied by wine, a brit milah, a wedding, the 4 cups of wine we drink at Shavuot. On the other hand, our tradition is also familiar with some of I'm not on Shavuot, the 4 cups of wine on Pesach. My mind's on Shavuot. Thank you, Vanna. We're all familiar with the potential downsides of wine, and our tradition also contains warnings about it. So I want to make sure that we all hear the message that we should drink responsibly tonight and every night, and for you dartiers, every day too. My favorite verse about wine, as it appears in the Jewish sources, is a verse that says from the rabbinic tradition, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod. Basically, wine goes in and secrets come out. So The rabbis picked up on this, and we should too. Be careful who you drink wine with. You never know what might emerge from your conversations. I'm going to take you through our first cocktail tonight, and then I'll have a chance, while we're enjoying that, to tell you a little bit more about Jews and the tradition around distilling spirits, which is a little lesser known, and I'll be excited to share that with you. The first cocktail that we're going to make tonight, the first of two of my favorites that I've brought for you tonight, is my twist on a gimlet. My twist on a gimlet is really a combination of two different drinks, a gimlet and a last word. So where does a gimlet come from? A gimlet actually was promoted by British officers in the 19th century because lime juice was considered to be a way to prevent scurvy. And scurvy was linked to a vitamin C deficiency. So one of the ways to deal with scurvy was to make sure that everybody was drinking enough lime juice. The problem is that lime juice was not too pleasant to drink. So there was a rear admiral by the name of Sir Thomas Desmond Gimlet, who used to be like a doctor to sailors and would give them gin with the lime juice in order to make the lime juice go down more easily. That's kind of neat, right? So the essence of a gimlet was really the lime juice, and the gin was just along for the ride. The last word is a drink that was very popular in the early decades of the 20th century, pre-prohibition, a cocktail that's made of equal parts gin, maraschino liqueur, chartreuse, and lime juice again. It wasn't long before the last word was a staple in bars all over the country, and it was beloved for its very beautiful combination of sweet, sour, and herbal tones. The last word, Anne, does that ring familiar to you in any way?
You always have the last word.
There you go. They say the last words are for fools who haven't said enough. But, you know, in thinking about what to call my version of this combo between a gimlet and the last word, I was trying to come up with some names. I came up with maybe the gimlet that leaves you speechless, or shut up and drink. But here I am, here we all are, just less than a week away from Shavuot, the mountain of Sinai in which we heard the ultimate word of God. So maybe this cocktail should be called the Sinai Gimlet. I mean, I don't mean to be presumptuous to suggest that my gimlets are as divine as what happened at Sinai, but as Andy says, if the cocktail shakes, claim it. All right, here we go. We are going to use for this cocktail some fresh basil. We are going to use gin. I like to use Hendrick's for this particular cocktail because it has a nice floral bouquet to it, but you can use any gin. We are going to use Saint Germain elderflower liqueur, or you can use simple syrup. We are going to use green chartreuse, and we are going to use Luxardo. Right? Green chartreuse is also a nice herbaceous liqueur made by the Carthusian monks in France. There's green chartreuse and there's yellow chartreuse. We're going to use green for this. Okay. If you have a muddler, I apologize, that was one thing I think I left off the list. You want to take a shaker and a muddler, and if you don't have a muddler, you can use anything that has kind of a blunt end on it. Even the back of a spoon could work. You're going to take some fresh basil and pop it into your cocktail shaker, and you're going to muddle it. But we don't want to pulverize it so that it becomes completely destroyed. You just want to soften it up as much as you can so that the fragrance of the basil starts to fill the cocktail shaker. Nice, okay. Now, this drink can be made with either gin or vodka, depending on your preference. So take a hold of whichever one you're using tonight. And you're gonna take a jigger. Another thing I forgot to put on the list. You know, I'm middle-aged now, and you can see. We're going to put 2 ounces of either gin or vodka, so multiply by however many drinks that you're making. I'm going to make 3 drinks. Hope you're following along here. Okay. I need one more here. Okay. We've got our gin going. You're going to take half an ounce of Saint Germain liqueur, or if you're not using Saint Germain, feel free to use your simple syrup, which, as I explained, can be made by putting equal parts water and sugar in a saucepan, heating it up until the sugar dissolves, and then you can bottle that, put it in the fridge, and keep it for weeks. Okay, after the Saint Germain, we're going to do also half an ounce of the green chartreuse. And you're going to do an ounce of fresh lime juice. I'm kind of a stickler about fresh lime as opposed to lime juice that comes out of a bottle. There's nothing that compares to the freshness and to the nice texture of fresh lime juice.
Dini, we have a question.
Hang on one sec. It's an ounce of fresh lime juice. Yes, Tam.
What's the difference between Saint Germain and simple syrup?
So Saint Germain is an elderflower liqueur, and I like the hint of the elderflower in this ingredient, which is used to sweeten this drink a little bit. The simple syrup is just sugar water, basically. The elderflower liqueur, Saint Germain, gives it yet another dimension of a nice herbal liqueur.
And how much chartreuse should everyone be adding?
Chartreuse is half an ounce of chartreuse.
Is there any substitute for chartreuse if you don't have it?
If you don't have chartreuse, honestly, I would leave it out.
Okay.
I would leave it out. You're going to finish it off with just a splash of Luxardo. Luxardo, as I said, is a maraschino cherry liqueur, not those nasty maraschinos that are dyed, crazy red. Although, hold that notion of crazy red dye in your head, because we're going to come back to it a little bit later. This is just a natural maraschino liqueur. You're going to put just a splash. Just a splash. Okay. Oh, and can you grab my ice, please? The small ice. Once you have all that going in your cocktail glass, you're going to put this one. Yeah, this one. You're going to put a bunch of ice in your shaker. All right. Thank you. And then
We love your assistant. Just thought we should tell you, you're a great assistant.
Why, thank you. Vanna is a wonderful.
That's right. Vanna White.
Oh, I put this in the wrong one. Okay. Okay, once you have your shaker filled with ice, you're going to cover it up and we're going to shake. Now, there's a great art to shaking. You have some bartenders who shake in a figure 8, and that's considered to be the appropriate way. I'm a rabbi, I shake in the shape of a Magen David, a Star of David. See if you can follow me along. Just kidding. Just kidding. But shake it up so it gets nice and cool. Where's my nose? Oh, up in the back. Okay.
Backtracking. So does chartreuse have flavor or just color?
It does. It does. Chartreuse actually has a really nice herby flavor. It's made from. I'm trying to see if the names of the herbs are here, and of course it's not, because the Carthusian monks are very protective over their recipe. But it's actually on the bottle says a secret method of preparation. So it does have flavor. It's not just for color, and it adds a nice sort of freshness, a nice earthiness to it. Okay, the appropriate glass for this cocktail is called a coupe, but of course you can use any glass you like, and it's also up to you whether you want to enjoy this up, which means without ice, or whether you'd like it on the rocks. So, how would you like it, ladies?
On the rocks. On the rocks, please.
Okay, they're having on the rocks. So, pour yourself your Sinai gimlet, or your gimlet that'll render you speechless, I hope. If you could open your, there we go. All right. What's nice also is once you've muddled that basil right at the beginning, I don't know if you can see, but the drink should come out with little flecks of basil that give it a really pretty design.
Could you use mint?
You know, you can use mint. You can. That's a good question. If you don't have basil, you can substitute with another really nice fragrant herb. Okay, Tamar, there's for you. You want to come around and we can...
Sure.
It looks like
Thank
someone's
you.
trying to come in.
How much Saint Germain again?
Saint Germain was half an ounce.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Tam?
Well, let me just let our participant in.
Here's the first of many
Managed
l'chaim.
participants.
I hope you enjoy it if you've made it, or whatever it is that you're sipping. L'chaim.
Yes. L'chaim. Delicious.
I'm speechless.
This is your last word.
Actually, you're all speechless, which is lovely. I'm just going to take that as a really good compliment. Okay. Please feel free to enjoy that.
Jeannie, what about the last of our?
What about the last Devar? Oh, the last Devar. Wow, that's a good one. Who said that? Anne, was that you? That's a good one. I will credit you when I use that next time. The last Devar. Okay. So whether it's a last Devar in your hands or it's something else, sit back for a little bit. I want to continue telling you a really interesting story about the role of Jewish people in the spirits industry. You know, the oldest alcoholic beverages, wine and beer, figure quite prominently in the Torah and in the Talmud. But distilled spirits, such as the ones that we're using here, vodka, gin, and later on tequila, those are of a more recent vintage. And so the stories are a little bit more modern. Now, I come by my interest in this world legitimately. I'm from Montreal, Quebec, where, as many of you know, we grew up with the Bronfman family of the famous Seagram's brand of liquor, which is now one of the most, the biggest, most successful companies in the world in the alcohol industry. You probably picked up when I said A before that I am from Montreal. I'm pretty proud of it. In 1889, the Bronfman family fled Europe in the wake of anti-Jewish pogroms and came to Canada seeking safety. Now, a wealthy family they were already back then, and they brought with them 2 servants and their rabbi. So if anybody is feeling the need to flee somewhere, you know, more relaxing to be during this crazy pandemic, and you need a rabbi to flee with you, send me an email.
And your assistant.
I'm available.
Maybe after election day.
Oh,
I mean, God forbid.
my
God
passport's ready. Thank you, Lily.
Her assistant's going too.
You know, the name Bronfman actually means liquor man. It actually means one who distills, which is kind of funny, right? So the Bronfman family came to Canada. They experienced a brief period of poverty, but as we know, they went on to build one of the largest distilling businesses and became major philanthropists in the Jewish world. Now, here in the United States, there's an amazing story about the Jewish roots of the only spirit that can legitimately be called the American spirit, because it is required to be manufactured in the States in order to be worthy of its name. And that is, of course,
bourbon.
Bourbon, exactly, exactly. Bourbon to the United States is champagne to France. Now, maybe surprisingly to some of you, it was a little surprising to me when I learned about this the first time, Jewish immigrants to America played a huge role in the production, the distribution, and the retail sale of alcohol all across the United States. And many of these Jewish families came by this business legitimately, because in medieval and early modern Europe, when Jews were forbidden to own land, they were, you know, pushed into roles in the market that were more intermediary roles, and that included the importing and exporting of alcohol. The liquor business was one of the few industries that wasn't restricted to Jews. So that in a really interesting book called Jews and Booze by a professor named Marnie Davis, she says that Jews have brewed and distilled and sold all kinds of intoxicating beverages to other Jews and to people who aren't Jewish since the very beginning of the diaspora. Now, it was also natural that Jewish immigrants to this country turned to the whiskey industry instead of the beer industry, which was a very big business, because the influx of German immigrants who got into the brewery businesses, those industry leaders tended to only hire Protestant immigrants from Germany as well, a remnant of the ban on Jews in the brewing guilds from the 19th century. We were so prominent in the whiskey industry that in the 1880s in Louisville, the Jewish community comprised only 3% of the population, but 25% of the whiskey trade. So those numbers are pretty telling in and of themselves. And the fortunes that were made by the families who were involved in the whiskey business, particularly in Cincinnati, which is home to the headquarters of the Reform movement, those family riches ended up being the philanthropic source of some of the most prominent, important Jewish institutions that dot the Jewish landscape, including Hebrew Union College and other major Jewish libraries and establishments. But, and here comes the big but, those who were advocating for prohibition seized upon the fact that there was a high proportion of Jews involved in the distillery businesses and a high percentage of immigrants in general. And many of them used their anti-immigrant feelings and their anti-Semitic feelings in order to create the kind of outrage and protest that ultimately led to the passage of the 18th Amendment banning the sale of liquor. And the fact that the industry by then had become highly corrupt didn't exactly help. And many actually singled out the Jews precisely in that way. So that Henry Ford, who was, known for his anti-Semitic feelings, he was very much a supporter of prohibition, which he thought would actually increase the productivity of his employees. And he claimed that distilling was just one of a long line of businesses that had been ruined by a Jewish monopoly. There was a very well-known, very successful Jewish leader in the industry by the name of Louis Rosenthal, who had been indicted, although never convicted, of bootlegging during Prohibition. It wasn't until the 1970s that it came out that he had very close ties to some Jewish gangsters like Meyer Lansky. But he is nonetheless remembered for having been responsible for landmark legislation that affected production standards for whiskey and bourbon, and that protected bourbon as a uniquely American product. There were a lot of immigrant families that got into this industry but never actually put their own family names on their products, which is kind of interesting. Like, think of the Beam family of like Jim Beam whiskey. You never saw the Rosenthal bourbon or the Bernheim bourbon. Instead, you saw labels that romanticized the stories of those who were thought of as the settlers of the frontier, Evan Williams and Elijah Craig, for example. But those stories, by the way, were not always true. A lot of them were very romanticized legends. But the Jewish families in the business really shied away from provoking any kind of anti-Semitic backlash by not making their names the source of the naming of their product. In fact, it was the Shapira family, who were Russian immigrants in the early decades of the 20th century, whose distillery produced Elijah Craig and Evan Williams bourbon. but you never would have known it. The only way you would know that is if you went to the grounds of the distillery that was started by the Shapiro family. If you went there today to the Bourbon Heritage Center, which is in Kentucky, and if you looked carefully at the metal grids that support the wooden beams in their visitor center, you would see that those metal grids are actually built in the formation of a Magen David. And that is the only thing that suggests the presence of Jews in the history of that distillery that went on to produce some of the most famous names in the bourbon world. Let's go back to Prohibition for a second. Again, the 18th Amendment passed in 1919 and not repealed until 1933. What might be lesser known to people is the fact that rabbis in America, speaking of which, excuse me one second. Rabbis in America, at the beginning, were very much against prohibition because they worried that restricting people's access to alcohol could lead to all kinds of dangerous restrictions of human freedoms and of human rights. It was interesting, the backlash against Jews in the liquor business also was conflated with the fact that many of the establishments, the bars that were thriving in Black American neighborhoods were owned by Jews. And so anti-Semitism and racism fused in a very dangerous way that really, really intensified those who were pushing for prohibition. Unfortunately, Tam, we got someone coming in. Unfortunately, one of the sort of less, how should we put this? One of the less proud moments for the Jewish community in the story of Prohibition happened around what's now called the sacramental wine scandal. The sacramental wine scandal that involved the abuse of one of the exemptions written into the 18th Amendment that allowed for the consumption of wine by Jews and Catholics for religious purposes. All of a sudden, you had people who presented themselves as rabbis, some of whom weren't even Jewish, representing congregations that suddenly were exploding with members, some of whom had last names like Houlihan and McGuire, all lining up to get their sacramental wine to be distributed to their congregants, using names sometimes of congregants that were long dead. And in another interesting quirk of the sacramental wine scandal, what people found was that these rabbis were dispensing not just sacramental wine, but also sacramental sherry and sacramental vermouth. I've been to a lot of Kiddush clubs in my time. I have yet to see a ritual martini, though I take that as a challenge to develop. It would be my honor. So, you know, despite early successes amongst the Jewish community in the alcohol industry, and despite the amazing philanthropy that emerged from those successes, by the turn of the 20th century, the image of Jews in the alcohol industry had become seriously diminished. And as a result of that, the rabbinic perspective on prohibition changed also. And towards the end, you had a lot of prominent rabbis who actually ended up advocating in favor of prohibition. Let's fast forward today. We are living through an amazing revolution in the craft cocktail world. The presence of craft cocktail bars, of self-made mixologists, of speakeasies, of conventions for cocktail making, classes, certifications of all kinds, have taken over the drinking world. Some say that we're kind of on the tail end of that as people prefer to return to the sort of more chill neighborhood bar feeling. But I think that the way we drink has been changed for good, as so many of us now have learned to appreciate a nice, well-balanced cocktail. Tel Aviv now is one of the most exciting cocktail scenes in the world. Andy and I love checking out cocktail bars, craft cocktail bars, whenever we are in Israel, as we are very regularly. And I was going to actually showcase a cocktail from one of our favorite bars in Tel Aviv. But, you know, Israelis like to both be, you know, really super chill and warm and also use all kinds of very sophisticated ingredients. I mean, in Israeli cocktails, you'll find things like beets, and you'll find things like green tea, hyssop. You'll find things like lavender and even goose fat. And this is it. I saw a recipe for a chalava martini. A chalava martini. So I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to, I hope I've sort of whet your appetite, not just for this first cocktail, but I hope you're a little hungry too, because Andy's going to take over now and show you how to make sure that you're eating enough while you're drinking.
Thanks, Dean. So as you can all tell, I'm not Canadian. And from my accent, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out that I am a native of northern New Jersey and have enjoyed it since 1989. I'm not good at mixing cocktails, but I am good at feeding people. And of course, it's all about the way that it looks. So I don't know if any of you have a platter nearby, or if you pulled out all the snacks that you have in your house, but I'm going to show you how to construct a grazing board. And I'm going to leave it up to you to be creative from this point on, but I'm going to tell you about some of the things that I like to put on our grazing board. So I don't know, Tam, if you can show everybody how we've started with it. Get yourself a big board and get all the things that you like and want to put on your board, and make sure that they are different colors, different textures, different things, and let's build it together. So right now I have a very delicious container of guacamole, and the guacamole that we make, thanks to our very good friend Debbie Lerner, we put in jalapeno peppers, we put in red onion, lime juice, and of course salt and pepper. So it's actually very tasty. You know, add that to your grazing board. Find all the different kinds of vegetables that you like. The key to a grazing board is to make sure that there isn't a space that you can see by the time you're finished. Okay, so right here, I put some crudité. I'm going to add a bowl of, this is mozzarella. Just place it over there. I do recognize that during this time of COVID, sharing grazing platters is not exactly the politically correct thing to do. I'm hoping you're doing it amongst the family, and when things open up, you'll be able to do it amongst your friends. I then have smoked salmon. Them, Tam, I don't know if you want to show everybody, but placing our smoked salmon right over there. I then have some olives, so we're going to put the olives on.
So,
right?
so some things stay in containers?
Some things stay in containers, some things go directly on the plate. Hummus is a good dip to add, and with whatever your favorite hummus is, top it with some za'atar and some lemon olive oil, and we will place that over there. And then have a great time adding your snacks. So, of course, I love these terra chips because they're very colorful. So I'm just going to empty the whole bag right over there. Thank you, Vanna. Then these dippers, these corn dippers from Trader Joe's are fantastic. So open up a bag, sprinkle them over there. Okay? And then I would add some fresh fruit. So right here I have some strawberries, but of course, well, of course people like dried fruit. I know I had some mangoes somewhere.
Right here.
Here are our mangoes, dried mangoes. So let's open those up and stick them right over here, right? Making sure that you don't have any spaces. All right, I roasted some almonds. All you need to do is take raw almonds, put them in the oven, 400 degrees, nothing on them. Wait until they're nice and brown. They're very crunchy and taste delicious. Of course, these are my favorite chips of all, which are the sweet potato tortilla chips. And I'm going to take those and sprinkle them right over here. Now, I'm looking at my grazing board and I'm seeing that I have some spaces. So what do? Well, get yourself some pretty flowers from Whole Foods. and just stick them,
Or anywhere.
or anywhere, of course, and just stick them around
How gorgeous.
wherever you feel like you have a space. See, right over here.
And you can use anything on a grazing board. Which
Yes.
is,
Absolutely anything that you like. And I think I'm going to put those lilies over there. Do we have any spaces?
You're looking good.
I think it's looking really good, Mom.
Now, what I do want to just add with regard to a grazing board is you can do themed grazing boards. So for me, this is sort of our pre-Shabbos grazing board. So we tend to do a lot of chips, nuts, and dips and crudité, right? And by the way, these are the best. If you like spicy, these by far are the best.
You've already mentioned that, honey.
No, I didn't.
Have another sip of your
No.
Sinai gimlet.
I didn't actually. These are the best.
Not sponsored by Trader Joe's.
But you can also do a grazing board just of fruits, or you could just do a grazing board of candy. You could do a grazing board of meats. The main point of it is to make it full, to make sure that there is no space, and at the end of the day, it's a great way to stand around an island with your gin gimlet, gnashing on some appetizers, and bringing Shabbat.
Shall we graze?
Olives also are a great way to a great addition to a grazing board. So,
Okay.
handing back to you, Dean.
Beautiful. Did everybody get a good enough?
Did everybody see the grazing board? Get an idea of what it should look like? Great. A question? Is there a question?
Yes, I'm going to read out. So,
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
everyone says that your grazing board looks so beautiful.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Enjoy.
All right. Want to put the camera back?
Back to.
All right. So we're ready for our second cocktail.
I haven't finished my first yet.
Well, drink up. So
Come on, Mom.
I want to teach you a little bit about a fantastic cocktail called the Oaxacan Old Fashioned. The Oaxacan Old Fashioned. It's a variation on the Old Fashioned that comes from one of my favorite bars in New York City called Death and Company. Death and Co. Fantastic. Oh yeah, I see. Great. Rebecca and Isaac know exactly what I'm talking about. An amazing place. If you're gonna go early, or send an email to one of the managers. I've got his card. If you want his email, just message me afterwards. So let's go back to the original Old Fashioned. For most people, the Old Fashions, I think someone's trying to come in, Tam. The original Old Fashioned, to many people, is when, you slide up to a bar and you say to the bartender, make me a cocktail the Old Fashioned way. And, that was part of the culture of cocktails in this country 100 years ago. The earliest reference to the Old Fashioned comes from a recipe book for cocktails from 1862, which lists actually an Old Fashioned called the Old Fashioned Holland Gin cocktail. Isn't that interesting? The original Old Fashioned was made with gin, not with bourbon. In 1880, the drink as we know it, which has bourbon as its base, was born in Louisville, Kentucky, where you took a cube of sugar and dissolved it in water. You put in some dashes of Angostura bitters, some bourbon, and an orange twist, and there you have it, an Old Fashioned, which is a fail-proof, fantastic cocktail. Death and Company, though, offers a twist on the Old Fashioned, which substitutes tequila and mezcal for the bourbon. And I'm going to walk you through that in a minute, but you might be wondering, okay, what do Jews have to do with a Oaxacan Old Fashioned? I thought you'd never ask. And I have to say that I want to dedicate the explanation in response to that question to my dear friend who's in the Hollywood Square just below me to my left, my buddy, Bob Cantor.
Wait, Bob.
Give away, Bob. There you go. So Oaxaca is a state in Mexico in the southwestern part of the country, and it is home to some of the most vibrant crafts and sort of art scene very colorful and vibrant festivals and wonderful cuisine and a diverse array of natural resources. In a nod to my Canadian roots, I discovered a fascinating story of a Jewish couple from Toronto, and I know there are some folks from Toronto here with us tonight, who moved from Toronto to Oaxaca to start a B&B. That was their dream, to move to Oaxaca, build a beautiful home, and to open it to guests. And Alvin Starkman and his wife Arlene have been in Oaxaca, I think, for at least a decade, maybe longer. And Alvin actually has written many, many articles about Oaxaca. He's a wonderful guide and offers all kinds of different tours. But in terms of their Jewish life, and they were used to a really nice, vibrant Jewish life in Toronto, the beginning it was a little bit hard. Sometimes they would see Stars of David on the outside, Magen David's on the outside of storefronts, and they would go in and ask if the owner of the store might be Jewish. But they were explained that actually in that region, a Star of David is actually a symbol of good luck. And when I led my trip to Sicily, we found lots and lots of Stars of David in all kinds of different settings, in the grids of wrought iron balconies, in all kinds of the sides of palaces that were built. And we thought, oh wow, here's a remnant of, you know, the Jewish community. And in fact, we were educated that it's actually a symbol that holds resonance for cultures of all kinds. Sometimes Alvin talks about how they would pass a daycare center that was called the Shalom Daycare Center. And so ran in again, all excited. Oh, maybe there's other Jewish people here in Oaxaca, only to learn that in fact, it's just a name that they chose. Same with a fabric store called the Jerusalem Fabric Store. You know, they turned away wishing that they had found other Jews in order to share, you know, their Jewish lives in Oaxaca. In addition to the beautiful friendships that they created with some of the other locals and their families. But that's not the end of the story about the presence of Jews in Oaxaca. And here's something really interesting. Apparently, around the 16th century, after the Spanish conquest, until about the mid-1800s, Oaxaca had quite a significant Jewish population. And that population derived mostly from merchants who were involved in the production and the export of cochineal. Cochineal is a tiny little insect which attaches itself to a particular kind of cactus. And when you take this tiny little insect and you harvest it and you allow it to become very, very dry. When you take the cactus on which it had attached itself and you allow it to dry and then you pulverize it, it produces this gorgeous red color, which was turned into this brilliant red dye. And for about 200 years, this color red was considered to be the strongest, boldest color known to humankind. And in Oaxaca, there was a thriving cochineal trade from which it was exported to Europe, to Asia, to the Far East, and it was used to dye fabrics. It was used to produce makeup. It was used to color foods, and it was used in, Bob? It was used in Campari. That was the classic ingredient that made Campari the gorgeous red that it is. I'm talking to Bob because Bob is a big Campari fan and actually has one of the most extraordinary light fixtures in his apartment made entirely of small little Campari bottles. It's something to behold. It's not only about lipstick, but which was also made with cochineal dye, but the Jewish community in Oaxaca actually had a huge role in the production and the export of that red dye. So once, though, the artificial version of that red dye was created, the industry around cochineal production really diminished, and along with it, the Jewish presence in Oaxaca. Now there are approximately 9 Jews living in Oaxaca. But the story lives on. Okay, let's make a Oaxacan old fashioned. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take, if you don't have a second cocktail shaker, then you can just rinse out your first. And we are gonna take reposado tequila, right? Tequila comes in a bunch of different variations. The one we're gonna use for, and the variations depend on how long the tequila is allowed to sit, and the way in which it's sort of aged. So the reposado version of tequila is what we're using for this cocktail, along with some mezcal, which is tequila that has a smoky flavor, again, that is given to it in the way that it is produced in sort of smoky, fiery beds, if you will. And we are going to add to this some agave nectar and some Angostura aromatic bitters. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take 1.5 ounces of reposado tequila, and we're going to put it into your shaker. All right, I'm making 3, so bear with me. After you have your reposado, you're going to turn to your mezcal, and you're going to put 1/2 ounce of mezcal into the shaker. All right, and then you're going to take about half a tea. It calls for a teaspoon of agave. I don't particularly like very sweet drinks, so you can adjust the agave as you like. I'm certainly not going to put 3 teaspoons in here. I'm going to put maybe 1.5 teaspoons of agave in here. And then you're going to put 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. That's 6, right?
You got it.
Thank you, Ben.
You can
All
still
right.
do it.
Now, what you want to do here is add some ice to the shaker, but we're not going to shake. We're going to stir. We're going to stir with either a regular spoon, or you might have a bar spoon that looks something like this. And for about 30 seconds, you're going to stir it. People say that the best way to get the flavors blended is to use the back of the spoon and just Going to make sure that it all gets nice and stirred together. All right. And then what you're going to do is take hold on one second, I need something else here. You can take a cover that will allow you to pour out not the ice that's in there, but just the liquid that's in there. And you're going to take an ice cube. If you have an ice cube tray that makes nice big ice cubes like this, you're going to put it into a rocks glass or a low tumbler, like so. And we're going to garnish it with an orange twist, right? But what's really nice is if you smoke the orange twist. So would you mind just lighting a match for me, please? If you just sort of pass the orange peel over the flame, okay? Then you've allowed it to release some flavors. Pour your drink into your tumbler. You're going to want to just twist that peel over to release its essence and pop it in there. And there's your Oaxacan Old Fashioned. Knowing the Jewish roots of Oaxaca in the production of a different liqueur, Campari, that gives us our Jewish twist on the Oaxacan Old Fashioned.
Thank you.
Smells so good.
L'chaim.
Yes, l'chaim, l'chaim.
You don't want another mix?
Yes, we're going to twist this too. Anybody have any questions, comments, any stories from your own cocktail life that you want to share? Any advice that you want to give me? I know, stick to being a rabbi, right? I hear you. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. We have just a couple of minutes left, and we'd love to hear your voices. And
Tell us more about your trips, where else you go, and if you only see your congregants.
oh, thank you, Betsy. No, we are open and welcoming of anybody and everybody who would like to be a part of our programs. I have been running small group travel experiences. By small, I mean 25, 30 people. We have traveled the world. We have been to Cuba, Panama, Argentina, Berlin, Krakow, Sicily, Croatia, of course to Israel. We have done a few trips to the American South to look at the story of the civil rights struggle through Jewish eyes. So we identify exciting places to travel to all over the world with the goal of not just learning about a new country and meeting interesting people, but with the goal of actually through community building and informal but deep learning and ritual and reflection to gain a deep understanding of who we are in the world. If you're not speaking, mute yourselves. How about I'll mute you all? I will just, and I've just muted you all. I do, in fact, have the last word. But Betsy, the point of our educational travel is really to use travel as a setting for deep personal reflection, for meaningful Jewish learning, for enriching community building, to imagine a new understanding of ourselves as human beings and as Jews, and to take deeper responsibility for the role that we play in our own communities and in the world around us. So that's a wonderful question that prompts me to say that if anybody would like to learn more about the programs that I lead and that I offer, please send an email to me, rabbi@sha'arcommunities.org. All that information was on the event page as well. And we will be thrilled also to add your names to our distribution list so you can stay apprised of all kinds of future events and programs that we put on. If you don't want to be added to our list, please send me a note to ask not to be added. But otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed your time with us and that you do, in fact, wish to stay in touch with us. We would love to get to know all of you and love to meet in the Jewish world, whether in the New York area or online beyond. And we are just so grateful that you've joined us tonight. We wish you a l'chaim, a Shabbat Shalom. May we emerge from this time of crisis where we remain divided by screens to a time where we can embrace and return to the opportunity for deep Jewish fellowship, for love, for healing, for ourselves, for our planet, and sanctify moments for the great l'chaim.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm going to unmute you all so everyone can now say
Chaim.
Shabbat and L'chaim.
So fun.
Thank you. Shalom.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Debbie Shan.
So glad you joined us.
Tell Daddy.
Oh, Daddy.
We're gonna graze now? I'm the grazing board.
Okay, you graze.
L'chaim, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bye.
Shalom.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
I'm trying to, Shirley.
Mom, you're still on.
Hey, Mom.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey.
How you doing?
Hello. You want to graze with us?
Sure.
We have great guacamole here.
Judy, how you doing?
Judy's frozen.
Oh,
All right, I'll talk to you later.
how are you, sweetheart?
Good. All good. You?
Oh, that.
Oh, wait, so don't go anywhere. Now it's just
Yeah.
us.
We're still recording.